Hey, what's up? It's Comic 95 Best Savior, and I literally just got through making a video, same day, talking about comparisons between Japan and the US, dealing with this whole conveyor belt sushi scandal thing going on in Japan, being all over TikTok and Instagram. And then I came across a article about Tyre Nichols, and I want to say that I want to keep this on the topic that I find bothersome and not on the writer. I believe the person who wrote this article, I think, might be a black man, and this is not by any means to attack a fellow, brother here in Japan. It's not my purpose in this, not to attack him. I totally understand where he's coming from, but I want to say that I do find this article to be problematic for a few different reasons. And I found it ironic because when I read the article, which I did read it was different from what I expected it to be like, and it did kind of speak on both sides, but I wanted to kind of counter argue what this person was saying and speak on that other side that he did touch on as well, so I will give him that. And basically the article was, I'm summarizing it here, but it was essentially titled something along the lines of, what if Tyre Nichols were to have been living in Japan? And both the title and the article, in my humbly honest opinion, was dismissive, I feel, towards this whole situation in two different ways. One, I feel like when you pose questions like that, while you might mean it from an innocent point of view or place, you're dealing with people that are not even black that are going to be reading and watching this, and instead their takeaway from it is, instead of dealing with problems that you have in your home country, fixing things and make it better, this goes back into the go back to your home country, or you don't like it, then leave type thing. And sure, Japan wouldn't be his home country, but you get what I'm trying to say, like, instead of fixing the problem at hand where you are, run away and find somewhere that's safer, essentially. And I feel like that just contradicts everything that our ancestors ever went through to even build the United States to begin with. Not to mention, I feel like it paints the idea inside of people's minds, which his article did kind of imply, that Japan is the safe haven for people of color. And I have sort of talked about this too, so not to contradict myself, but I also spoke on both sides as well, but in a different way. I feel like people confuse things not being as bad and forgetting that things are still bad. So for example, yes, of course, it feels easier and better to be in Japan than the US because I don't have to worry about people, for the most part, screaming at me because I am a black woman or a black person and or their prejudice or racist. But that doesn't mean that I don't deal with racism. In fact, I deal with more racism here in Japan than I did ever in my life in the United States. I've been much more aware of the fact that I was not like everyone else by being here in Japan, which is very interesting considering the fact that I spent a good portion of my life living with mostly white people, working with mostly white people, and going to school with mostly white people. I've been to private school, public school, a charter school. I've gone to several different churches. I spent a lot of my life hanging around with older white women and men, many of which whom were either prejudiced or grew up that way and had to change the way that they thought about black people. I've seen and been through it all pretty much. So with that said, I understand what this person's trying to say and what a lot of people's mindset is with saying that they're thinking, things are better, safe for me here in Japan as a black person. To a certain degree, I can kind of agree with that. But I feel like the issue of making statements like that is that Japan doesn't take it that way, and neither do white and Asian people that read articles and stuff like that, because I feel like by you saying that, you're essentially making it seem like Japan has no problem with race. And that's, I understand as a black person that's what you're getting at, but that's not the takeaway that other people will get from reading an article like that. It seems like you're essentially saying, and it doesn't matter what you think, it's how other people perceive it when you write an article like that. What people are going to get from what you're saying is that if they go to Japan, Japan is not a racist place. Japan does X, Y, and Z for you because they treat everybody equally. They're fair. They're whatever. Their police are good. And people honestly do think that. And as someone who shared that they had the same experience that I did in Japan as a black person as well, having people tell you, don't you feel better in Japan? Even the police themselves, patting themselves on the back for doing mediocre things or even going out of their way a little bit to help me. But I felt that it was completely, it got rid of the whole thankfulness and gratefulness that I would have had by them making ignorant comments to me, by reminding me of what things were like in the US with George Floyd, etc. And all I could do is think to myself is, yeah, of course I don't have to worry about you guys ending my life because you don't have weapons, but if I gave you guys weapons, you share the same racist beliefs, if not worse, than US police officers do. Anytime I've dealt with police here, they immediately side with the Japanese person's side of the story. They taunt me and try to make me feel guilty even though I'm not guilty. I've literally been made to feel like I was doing something wrong by being in Japan. And I'm about to do a story time on this actually on Saturday. I don't know when you're going to see this video. I'm going to post it before or after my story time. But I literally had multiple police officers, one in particular, basically get mad at me and threaten me by trying to say that they're going to do some investigation, try to find, what I'm doing here, X, Y, and Z. And if they find anything, that they're going to make sure that I get deported, X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I'm coming to you because I'm being blackmailed by a crazy Japanese man. I came to you on my own looking for help. And not only do you not help me, you get mad at me, refuse to listen to my story, and then try to victim blame me, so to speak, and make me seem like I'm the criminal here. Like, how crazy is that? So, yeah, it just blows my mind. And then I haven't had to deal with this personally, but I know plenty of people who have. Dealing with being racially profiled, etc. Like, Japan literally does the exact same stuff as the U.S. The difference is a lack of access to weapons. And many people here don't even realize that they're racially profiling you. Whereas in the U.S., it's pretty much common knowledge and done in a more angry, aggressive way. Whereas in Japan, they literally have just been taught, this is your job. Foreigners oftentimes overstay. They're dangerous, etc. X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. And I'll talk about this stuff much later. There's more to go into this because I've had a lot of bad experiences dealing with the police without having to deal with my life being on the line necessarily. But I hate when people make articles like this that compare U.S. situations to Japan, because for starters, we're two completely different countries. And I feel like when you do that, especially as black people, you're not helping your case like how a lot of us think we are, where we feel like we're condemning the U.S. and making them look bad, where, yes, of course you're doing that. You're making the U.S. look worse by doing that. And I'm not trying to cover up for the U.S. I'm just saying, by doing that, yes, it does embarrass the U.S. because you're drawing more attention by comparing them to another country. But the problem is, when you're comparing them to a country that is just as bad for black people, what you're doing is to white and Asian and even Hispanic people that are looking at this, they're saying, oh, okay, well then you should be happy being here in Japan because at least you don't have to deal with X, Y, and Z. And I feel like that completely, it really takes away from our stories here, and people make articles like that. It's really insensitive, really ignorant, I feel, when articles like that get written, because it dehumanizes, desensitizes people to our issues. I feel I can't even think of the right word to use, but I really hate when that type of stuff gets written, or when people even make videos about it, because what it ultimately does is it tells people, yeah, things are a little bit bad, but they could be a lot worse. Look what's going on in the U.S. I don't care about what's going on in the U.S. because I'm currently living in Japan right now. And I'm not saying this is a disrespectful thing towards Tyree Nichols, but I'm saying, like, this is Japan that we are living in. We're living in Japan. So if you're going to talk about Japan, please make it clear that this same situation that happened to Tyree Nichols could happen to us if police are given weapons here in Japan, like how they have in the U.S. It could happen to us if we don't speak on issues of race, etc. more. Please do not make this a comparison where you're like, well, if you were in Japan, you would have been safer. This would have happened. I feel like it's also rude and insensitive to their family. And I know that you don't mean it that way, but if I were Tyree Nichols' mother or family member, whatever, I would take it that way. I find it very offensive. And this is not for me to speak on it, because I'm not his family, I'm not his wife, I'm not his sister, I'm not anything like that to him. But as a fellow black person who's been living here for a long time and that has made videos talking about issues here being compared to America, I really hate seeing what I think is another black person, or at least another American, making a blog post in which you are essentially praising Japan by saying that it's a safer alternative for a black person, by downgrading the issues of racism that we have here by saying, well, at least we're not getting killed. And yeah, of course, I can agree with that statement, but I don't think that an article needs to be written about it, especially not during a time like this, and during Black History Month at that. Like, I just feel like it's completely insensitive, rude, ignorant, and while I get what you're trying to say as a black person, I understand it, other people do not. They read articles like that and they think, yeah, that's right, Japan has such wonderful police. They're such good people. Yeah, Japanese police don't have to worry about them shooting me or X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no, they most certainly would if they had weapons. They do racially profile. In fact, that's a big part of their job. You can literally find posts, videos, etc. on Instagram where they literally will tell people that they look dangerous, look suspicious simply because they are black or because they are, we're all people of color, technically, because that term is completely overused. It's supposed to mean black people, but now it means Hispanic, it means Asian, it means anything but white at this point. We got white people to think they're people of color, so that's a whole nother story. But I feel like when you do that, it's not just what I feel. It does. It really does. People don't take away from the story what they should. Instead, it's just that, oh, well, look, Japan is doing so much better than the U.S. And then it makes it really hard when we want to complain about stuff or talk about racial issues. Because then these same people that make these stupid articles where it's like, well, if you were in Japan, or I wish this person was in Japan because they would have been safer. Then Japan points that same finger back at you and says, oh, hold on. Look at what these foreigners have to say. They think Japan is a safer, better option. You get what I'm trying to say? So when we do deal with issues that deal with racism, etc., they may point that same figure back, oh, wait, hold on. Look at this foreigner that made this video about how much more, great and wonderful things are. Excuse me, I gotta sneeze, sorry. Sneeze and cough. Bless me. But, excuse me, guys. Not even gonna bother to edit this stuff out, but people make content like this, and then they'll turn around and make content talking about how bad Japan is, and this experience they had, how they were treated badly, and about housing discrimination. It's like, but you were just kissing Japan's butt and praising them, and I get it. Two totally different situations, right? Yes, of course, I understand it. As a black person, I understand that. But Japanese people won't. White people that are too busy enjoying their privilege here and enjoying the fact that everybody thinks they're so beautiful and so perfect, so whatever. Those specific people, not all white people, but you know what I'm talking about, those type of weebies. Those people with the yellow fever, the crazy ones like that. They're too busy enjoying and loving on Japan. They're going to bring up the fact, look at what this black person did. They made a video, they made an article about this. By doing that, you are hurting our cause for other serious situations just like this. This is a situation dealing with the U.S. in the U.S. Let it stay there. And I feel like this is the same situation with Black Lives Matter. And this is why I said I wasn't going to participate in it, and I was right. Everybody kind of lost their mind, like, what are you talking about? Oh, you can still participate, whatever. It's like, no. You can learn how to participate something, the cause, and out of organization. You can believe that black people's lives are important without having to get behind a business. And what do you know? Lo and behold, there's different opinions and whatever you want to call it about all of the stuff. But at the end of the day, a lot of fishy stuff seemed to have been going on. Money wasn't being spent the way it's supposed to be spent, and a lot of stuff. And I was grateful for the decision that I made before everybody else thought that it was cool and jumped on the bandwagon of deciding that maybe we shouldn't have been donating to them after all. I can believe that black people are important and that they matter, and acknowledge the fact that police brutality is an issue without having to be bullied and guilt-tripped into buying into a specific organization, which was Black Lives Matter. I saw through it at the beginning because I knew how to do my own research instead of being bullied into supporting an organization that I did not want to. Again, it's the organization, not the cause. I recognize there is a problem with police in the U.S., but I do also recognize there's also a problem with the organization and that I do not feel trusting towards it. Thus, I support the cause, but I do not support the exact organization. And I feel like the problem is with situations like even like that, people mean well, they want to draw attention to what's going on in the US, but it's like you doing that is kind of doing the reverse of your intention though, because all you're doing is showing Japan, we think the US is bad. Japan is not looking at you marching and protesting as, oh my god, maybe Japanese police should be kind to black people. Maybe Japanese police should reconsider how do we view foreign. They're not thinking any of that shit. All you're doing is telling Japan, wow, look at how wonderful our police are. It's a good thing that the foreigners here don't have to protest us. Do you see what I'm saying? You're not helping your cause in the country that you're living in. In fact, for a lot of the people that chose to join these organizations, they'll never tell you, especially people of color, they did it for views. They wanted to make a YouTube video showing themselves doing the march. They wanted to write a blog post. They wanted to share pictures. They just wanted to say that they were a part of the movement. And that's what it really all comes down to. Nobody wants to talk about that, but I went there. Whole other story. I said this at the very beginning, 3 years ago now. So anyway, fast forward to today. Please stop bringing America into crap that goes on here in Japan and vice versa. Let Tyrese Nichols rest in peace. Talk about black issues in the U.S. and keep them in the U.S. Do not compare it to Japan. If you want to bring U.S. issues with black people to Japan, please make sure you're comparing how we go through similar stuff and not try to downplay what we go through in Japan. If you're going to talk about the two, talk about two negative things. Do not talk about, oh, America's so bad with this, but look at how much more wonderful and nice things are here in Japan, because you ruin things for us when we do want to talk about issues that go on in Japan. Because the people that can actually make this change happen for us, that can help make our lives easier and better, they are going to go back to the videos that you made, the blog posts that you made, and they're going to read that. The Japan Times is not made for foreigners. For those of you that do not know, the Japan Times was started by a Japanese man, made for Japanese people that want to practice English. It's not made for foreigners to get the news. It's for Japanese people that want to improve their English ability. It gives them international news, and it also gives a foreigner's insight on Japan. It's for English practitioners, meaning that the majority of people reading this crap are Japanese people. oftentimes you see Americans, English speakers, Europeans, etc. in the comment section because it's also, I think, co-owned, or the parent company is the New York Times, etc. But at the end of the day, the main audience for this paper is not foreigners. It's not for English speakers. It's made for Japanese people that do speak English and or that want to learn to speak English, improve their English. So while you might have a large foreign audience, you are also talking to a large portion, if not more, Japanese people. Please be very careful with things that you write about and talk about. This is not to silence or hush you, but I really, really hate seeing these dumb articles being published and these videos being made, etc. And these even movements and organizations or whatever here in Japan. You're not helping Japan like how you think you are. You're not thinking from a Japanese perspective. Because the people that you think that you're reaching out to or showing whatever, first of all, if you really want to make change happen or whatever, you need to be doing it in Japanese, not in English. Japanese people walking down the street are not listening to a bunch of black people shouting crap in English. They don't understand what the fuck you're saying, for starts. And secondly, not just that, all they see from this is, like how I said earlier, oh wow, America is so bad. They're taking pictures, videos, oh, people are protesting incident in America. They're not seeing it in their own country. That's what really matters, where we live. I do not understand why we cannot get on, the same accord, the same line, the same page or whatever when it comes to this stuff. All it does is cause more problems for us. Because then when bad things do happen to us, the police literally pat themselves on the back. Well, at least we didn't lynch you. At least we didn't shoot you. At least we didn't do X, Y, and Z to you. And it's like, okay, did you still not just treat me badly? Did you still just not do something prejudiced, unfair, racist, sexist, whatever to me? Like, what? And then it's because of situations like this. It is. Not even a fair comparison. Sorry, but if Tyree Nichols were to be here in the U.S. I was about to say in the U.S. in Japan, he'd probably be racially profiled, probably end up in an immigration detention center or something like that. Might have difficulty finding a job, making friends, getting a girlfriend. Be assumed or presumed to be a gangbanger, drug dealer, somebody that smokes, gets high, whatever. A player. That's what would happen if he were here. Who cares about being your friend and passing or an acquaintance, etc.? I'm sorry, I'm angry, and I swear I'm trying to attack this person. But this is what I read inside their article, and I couldn't help but think to myself, how was your article helpful in a time like this? Would he be alive if he were here in Japan? What? And it brings me back to my video that I was talking about, how anytime that you see issues going on in America when it's being compared to Japan, it's always in a way to praise Japan. We never talk about things on an even playing field. If we're talking about police racially profiling, injustice, unfair treatment, why not compare it to what happened to that, what girls from Sri Lanka, whatever, it's at the detention center, immigration. Why not talk about that? Why not talk about the half black man who was also half Japanese being racially profiled because he had fucking dreadlocks? He looks like a drug dealer because he has dreadlocks? You know how many professional men have white collar jobs with dreadlocks? I don't even think he had tattoos. How about we talk about those incidents? There are people that don't have YouTube channels, don't have social media, that are black and have been arrested and accused of crimes they did not commit, and possibly even serving time here to this day here in Japan. Let's talk about those issues. Why are we praising Japan for not being as bad? Presumably thinking that it wouldn't be as bad for him to live here. As a tall, dark-skinned man that loves street fashion, apparently from his clothes and fashion that we saw in his photos, I highly doubt things would be cupcakes and rainbows for him here in Japan. How about we talk about what it would be like working here in Japan for him? Being made fun of for his dark complexion. People avoiding sitting next to him. Let's talk about those things. Can we stop trying to pretend like Japan is this answer for black people, our way of escaping racism? I can admit there are some things that I can honestly say I do prefer. And I get what you were trying to say. That is part of it. I can honestly say I do not fear for my life in Japan like how I fear for my life more in the U.S. Mainly because Japanese police don't have access to the same weapons. But what I do fear is being wrongly convicted for something. Because Japan does not give the same mercy that we do have. Despite how crooked the justice system may be in the U.S., we have a much more fair chance than you do in Japan. If you get arrested and tried for something, you best believe you did whatever they say you did, whether you did it or not. If Japan calls you guilty, you're guilty. That's the way it goes here. Everybody across the, whatever you want to call it, same punishment for the same crime. There's no, let's think about why they did it. Did it really happen? Is it possible? Could have been. They don't do all of that crap here. Can you make an article about that or a video about that? Why are we comparing apples and oranges or making these what if scenarios or hypotheses or I think or maybe, whatever? Like, just stop, please. You're not helping our case here. It goes right back into the whole Black Lives Matter movement, which I thought was really stupid to take place. And sure enough, what happened? After that took place, did the police in Japan change the way they treat black people? Nope. All they took away from it was a pat on the back. Yep. We don't do that to foreigners here. They should be grateful. Yep, we're not killing anybody here. We're not putting them in chokeholds. That's what they took away from it. They did not say, oh, wow, maybe we should think about how we treat foreigners. Maybe we should think about how we treat black people. All you all did was make a fool out of yourselves and the U.S. because the people that needed to hear that message, they didn't hear it. They laughed at it. They couldn't even understand what you were saying. It was a waste of time, and the organization, any money you put into it was a waste of your dollars, for the most part. Again, supporting the cause is totally different from the organization. I went there. I'm not being politically correct with you. I want all the smoke. I know black people are going to get mad at me for saying this. And so hear me out for any of the dumb, white people thinking I'm on their side. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I don't support black people and their lives do matter. I'm saying that I know how to separate my want for rights and justice for these black people that were clearly being abused and murdered by U.S. police officers. I can separate my thoughts and feelings on that and my want for that from jumping on a bandwagon and supporting an organization that I did not know enough about and felt distrusting towards. And I ended up being right in the end because all the scandalous crap came out, a year or 2 years after this whole thing. In fact, the organization ain't even run by a black person anymore. It's really owned by white people. So all the money going into Black Lives Matter ain't even supporting us. It's ultimately lining a white person's pockets anyway. So there's so much more to be said about that. I ain't finna go into all that detail. But, I'm not even gonna lie to you, I stopped even looking into that crap. I really, really, really hate seeing people trying to compare these apples and oranges situations because when they do it, they never do it in a fair way. If you're gonna talk about how Japan is better or safer or whatever than the U.S., please talk about something that's fair. Because that's definitely not the same situation. At all. They don't have access to the things that they do have in the U.S. And while sure, you might say he might still be alive, by you even making that comment, what you're registering in the minds of the racist, white, Asian, whatever people here, and the Japanese general public here, is that Japanese police are doing the right thing, they're doing their jobs correctly, there's no issues with racism here in Japan. That's what people are hearing. It doesn't matter if that's what you said, it doesn't matter if that's your message, it's what people are hearing when you say that. That's what people read, that's what they take away from this. They do not take away, but if they have weapons, maybe they will be just, that's not what they're getting from it. That's what a logical person should, I agree. But that's not what they're going to get from it. Thus, your comments are doing nothing but hurting the black community here. He's gone. Let's stop trying to fathom, if he was here, it's no different than the white people that say, well, if George Floyd wasn't selling cigarettes, or if they just stopped resisting, then they would still be here right now. You sound no different than that when I hear that. And it really frustrates me and makes me so upset when I see people doing crap like that, because it discredits, takes away from the whole situation. And instead of people being like, hey, the police did not act correctly, now the focus is on, well, if you weren't guilty, you weren't doing a crime, you would have never been in that situation to begin with. It's no different than that. Please stop saying that. We don't need hypothetical scenarios where if he were in Japan, maybe he would have been my friend. Maybe this wouldn't have happened. Yeah, maybe he would have committed suicide then. Let's talk about that. Are you going to make an article about that? Nope, they won't do that. God, that makes me so upset. Because that'd be a realistic thing. Most of the black people I know here in Japan are pretty damn depressed. No dating prospects, being cheated on, used for gifts of money, used for sex. You got suicide forest here. People killing themselves on train tracks daily. Delayed trains because of it. Prime Minister Abe just got assassinated. Now look at all the different things we could talk about. Do I see an article on that comparing that to the U.S.? Nope. I'm done. It just frustrates me so much. I feel like it does nothing but makes things harder for us here. Because people will take these stupid articles and be like, you know what? Japan really is a perfect place. It's a safe place for black people. When it's not. It's not. You might have to worry about getting killed by a bullet, but you sure do need some tough ass skin to be here when you got people that avoid sitting and standing next to you because they think you have the plague. And this is before even the coronavirus situation. But since then, I feel like things got worse. I literally just went to the bus stop yesterday, and the old woman standing behind me with her husband, she had like at least a 6-foot gap, if not longer. Not because of COVID. A good 6-foot gap between me and her waiting in line for a bus. And if you've ever been here in Japan, you know that the line for buses are normally really close knit together. Literally, every person is standing like this next to each other. The person in front of me, the person in front of that person, the person in front of that person. She is as far away from me as possible. I get on the bus, and people are literally praying to God in their mind, please don't let this black bitch sit next to me. That's exactly what's going on. When you make videos and blog posts like that, you are discrediting those stories. Indirectly. You might not mean to do, but it does that. Because when Japanese people read it, they think, wow, Japan really is a great place. You know what? It probably is better for black people to live here. They don't have to deal with the racism in the U.S. That's what people take away from it. It covers up the doo-doo that goes on here. You might not have to worry about your life being ended by a police officer through violent means, but you sure need to make sure that you don't take your own after going through the crap that you do here in Japan. Because if you're depressed, you're anxious, you're self-conscious, this is one of the worst places in the world to be, regardless of what your race is. Because there is no mental health support. You feel self-conscious because you have dark skin? Well, welcome to Japan. Look at my ass. I'm dark-skinned in Japan. I've literally had people look at me and rub my skin like the Native Americans back in the day when they first met a black person, according to the legends and stories like that. This place is not easy for black people. And I'm sorry if our comparison for what's a good or easy life for a black person has been diminished to whether someone is going to assassinate or murder me because of the color of my skin, if that's enough to make life good or better, then I don't even want to read anything from you or take advice from you or listen to any video that you have to say. Because that is beyond crazy, ridiculous, ignorant, and the fact that we have to lower the bar that damn low where we should decide a country is good or not, whether or not they have weapons to kill us with. That's it. We are literally asking for the bare minimum. I saw a really interesting article. Not article, but a meme. I think it was a tweet that somebody made, but it was turned into a meme on Facebook, and it said that the police force is the only career in the U.S. where people make up excuses for why you are bad at your job. People work retail every single day, and they get disrespected, get things thrown at them, get cursed out, get yelled at, people trying to fight them over the counter, etc., and you are expected to keep and hold your composure and be professional. You cannot say, well, because she got an attitude with me, I got one back with her. And I threw... No, you can't do that back. You understand as a part of your job is to remain calm and treat that customer like everyone else. Fairly. And by fairly, I mean unfair, in the sense that you provide them the exact same treatment, regardless of their behavior. You are polite to them. You don't break out of character because they're acting crazy with you. I talked about my experience working at JCPenney. I've said this several times on my channel. Old white couple got mad at me because their check was declined. She's shopping for Christmas for her grandkids. Got these expensive ass Toy Story 3 toys for her kids. She literally threw the toys at me and then apologized while I was picking them up. I had to pick up crap that she threw at me. She hit me. Do I get to knock her out because of that? What would happen if I put my hands... What would happen if I threw those toys back at her? I would get fired, would I not? So why do police officers get to say, well, this person was resisting arrest? Where in the police manual does it say that every person you arrest, every person that you come across will act perfectly? They will follow your rules. Where does it say that? Not to mention, we see a distinct difference in how they treat us. There's a huge difference in how a white person, honestly, even an Asian or Hispanic person, gets treated over a black person. And the irony in people thinking that weren't listening to us think the solution is black cops. Any black person can tell you the solution is not hiring black cops. It's the training of the police officers. Normally we see it with black police, with white police, but it happens to black ones too. In fact, we joke about how black cops are snitches in our community. We don't trust them either. The world was acting shocked by the fact there was 5 black police officers. We ain't surprised by this. It's shocking to have it be a huge news story and have it beaten that bad, yeah. But we know black cops are crooked too. Hence we say cops. Easy to get brainwashed for 90% of the police force. Not really 90%, you know what I mean. A large portion of the police force is white. And beyond just what the police force is, we've literally been trained our entire lives to believe that black people are more dangerous, more bad, more whatever. So as a black police officer, not surprised by that. But that's all a whole nother story. So I'm just getting frustrated thinking about this. So anyway, long story short, I swear to God, I don't want to swear to God. I promise you, my goal is not to attack the person who wrote this. It's the idea of it. I know that you mean well. I assume that you mean well. But when you write articles like that, make videos like that, you are literally making it harder for black people here because it discredits and takes away from the experiences that we do have. Because people just look back and say, oh, well, look, and this person, they're American, and they say it's worse in the U.S., so, yeah, you should be happy to be here in Japan. I mean, at least the police aren't shooting you down. Whatever. That's what people take away from it. Those are 2 completely different situations. American police are armed with weapons versus Japanese police not having them. Honestly, the police in Japan really, honestly, carry more racist thoughts than they do in the U.S., keeping it real with you. There's a lot less education about race here, too. And if the police don't get to him first, yeah, more than likely he possibly could end up not being here anyway. Due to mental health issues. Because I promise you, the black people that I know here in Japan are some of the worst mental health states that I've ever met in my entire life. Much worse off than in the U.S. It's tough here for black people. There's more to life than fearing guns. Wanting to have equal rights for getting a job, for getting a house, for making friends, for dating, etc. It is tough out here for black people. It is not a walk in the park because you come to Japan. And I have people that come inside my inbox every single day, emailing me, etc., asking about that, telling about their dreams of coming to Japan. It is tough here. You can choose to put on a blindfold and ignore it just like how you can in the U.S. But it's hard here. And even if it weren't to be hard, let's say Japan really is better than the U.S. It's just a magical place where nothing bad happens. How is that making the situation any better? Can we talk about trying to fix things in the U.S. for once? Like, just worry about the U.S. Let's stop bringing U.S. problems into Japan. You might feel good about putting it on the international stage or whatever, getting your little clicks and views or whatever. But ultimately, while it does shame the U.S., which is good to make them feel embarrassed of the crap they've done, it's not helping the black people that do live abroad. Because then when we do have problems and situations, all the police, immigration, the government, the presidents here do is they think, well, don't complain about here, go back to your home country if you have so many problems with Japan. That's what they think. You're literally setting up the exact same problems you're running away from. You're causing people here to have by making articles like that. Because I've literally had the police, people that I've been friends with, people that I've dated, people that I've worked with say ignorant crap like that. Well, if you have a problem with how things are in Japan, if you think the police are bad here in Japan, go back to the U.S. What? I'm done. So, okay, I don't want to talk for too long, but I do want to let you know that I recently discovered that there's some other information about this particular individual. I don't want to cause any more confusion, distress, or issues within the black community, but I must disclose this because I did discover it. Apparently, Tyree Nichols had some pretty negative things to say about dark skin, specifically black women. Not surprised here. I've seen tons of this type of information at this point. I watched the channel Paris Milan. I recently, well, not so recently, but about a year or two ago, I subscribed to her and I've been listening to her channel a lot. And I'm really surprised at the information that we find out about these people after they die, finding out that they had some really racist, colorist things to say, which is really disappointing. But I'm someone that strongly believes in justice regardless of what the situation is. It doesn't take away from the fact that what the police did to this person was wrong, but it does make it hard for you to sympathize and feel sorry for the individual when you see that they didn't even love their own race, the very people that produced him. This man literally came from a dark-skinned black woman. So I'm not going to get into that whole part of it. My feelings still remain the same, that I feel like comments where we are comparing black issues in America to black issues in Japan, in which we are not saying that they're the same or that they're similar, or saying, yeah, things are really bad in the US, but there's also bad things in Japan, but instead where we are framing the US as this awful place to live, but then acting as though there's life to be had in Japan, when that's just not true. And again, because the audience that we are speaking to is not just black, when we make videos and content and blog posts like this, we're speaking to majority Japanese, other Asian, and white people. And even black people from other countries. Because a lot of black people don't realize this, but unless you come from a place where you are a minority, meaning not in the Caribbean basically, and not in Africa, you normally have very little experience dealing with white people and or being the minority. And this is not up for debate. I've literally met and worked with people and watched people's content that have literally told me that they didn't really get the big deal about racial issues or touching hair and comments on skin or, fetishization, whatever. Like, they didn't see anything about it, any problem with it, because they never really experienced that. But that's all a whole nother story. In fact, I'm going to put this at the end of the video because I don't want to take away from what I was saying at the beginning. But long story short, yeah, it's really hurtful to us and our problems and issues here. Because all it makes people think is that Japan is perfect and has no issues here. And it makes it hard for us to get people that are going to fight for us and make things better for us within Japan. Because it's constantly being compared back, oh, well, things might be bad here in Japan, but there's so much worse in America. And so, well, it might be bad in Japan, but aren't you alive? Did you get shot today? This is what you're basically causing to happen. So I hate when people make these little clickbaity articles or whatever, because I get it. It gets views, it gets clicks. I know that as a YouTuber. But I feel like in situations like this is not the time to make an article or a video or whatever where you are trying to, I don't know, make comparisons about a sensitive topic, I feel. Especially since a lot of people are going to mean well when they watch this content. But they're not going to take away from it what you're thinking that they are. Instead, what people think is when they read and watch it, Japan is a wonderful place for black people. There's no issues here. Live in Japan, you'll live a long life. You don't have to worry about the police killing you. But it doesn't talk about the issues that you do face with the police. And even if you were to go into further detail, because it does talk a little bit about some social issues, that's not the highlight of the article, that's not the title of the article, and that whole message gets missed. Because what people are going to take away from it is, Japan is a safe place for black people where you'll have no problems. America's a dangerous place for black people where your life is on the line. That's ultimately what you're doing. And you might view it that way, you might think it's cool, but for those of us that are living in Japan, like the person that wrote the article, I believe they live in Japan, I feel like you should know and understand this firsthand. And on top of that, I might be wrong, but I recognize the name. I think I saw it somewhere else. I believe this person actually has a biracial, half black, half Japanese daughter. I could be wrong about that. This could be a white guy, but I'm 90% sure this man has a biracial, half black, half white, half black, half Asian, half Japanese daughter. So I feel like you really shouldn't be doing this because this will affect your child's life. And when she grows up and talks about issues that she has, people are not going to look back to your article and see it the way that you see it. It's going to be viewed as, oh, well, things might be bad in Japan. Yeah, sure, people are bullying you or think poorly of you because you're half black, but at least you're not dying in America. Is that comforting to you? So that's a whole other story. I'll stop right now because I'm like 5 minutes into this. But anyway, just want to add that to it. I found out some stuff about him that did kind of make me feel, a certain type of way. But keeping my focus on the topic of, is this helping or hurting the black community? I'm not going to worry about individual people and what they had to say about black women or black people or dark skin, whatever. That's not my issue. My issue is when what you're saying is going to ultimately affect me. Because whether you are dark or light skinned, to Asians, we are all the same. I'm dark skinned, even though I'm a light skinned black person within the black community. But to an Asian person, I'm black and my skin is dark. And when they talk negatively about black people, I'm included in those stereotypes, negative things, and even in situations where they think they're being positive, like saying, oh, isn't Japan such a wonderful, safe place? At least the police didn't choke you today. Those type of comments. So if you're going to be making my life difficult by basically spreading misinformation, for lack of a better term, or encouraging people to think these type of things, I feel like I want to speak on it. So again, let me reiterate, this is not to cause a war or threaten this person or attack them. I'm simply speaking how I feel. This frustrated me, and I don't like seeing articles like this or videos like this because I literally have conversations and I've read comments on videos by Japanese people and even white people, and I've seen people talk on the news even here in Japan that have said really ignorant stuff that sounds exactly like this. So it's really disappointing when I hear or read stuff like this, especially from a fellow black person where you would think you would know better. So yeah, that's it. I'm done. Thank you for watching the video. Bye. Thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. Leave your 2 cents down below in the comment section. Please subscribe if you have not already. Don't forget to like this video. If you have any video ideas, please send me an email or leave a comment down below. You can follow me on my social media. I have an Instagram and Twitter at Comic95, a Snapchat and TikTok at Comic the Savior. I have a Facebook fan page at Comic95 the Savior and a blog at Comic95.com. I make videos about Japan, working, studying, dating, living here in Japan. I have tons of playlists. I've probably already answered your question in a video there, so please check out my YouTube channel's homepage. If not, again, you can send me an email or leave a comment down below with any of your video ideas. So thank you so much for listening, thank you for watching, and I hope you'll watch another video.